So I had a great conversation with Brad Luttrell. He is one of the co-founders of Go Wild, and if you don't know what Go Wild is, it is a online platform, and it's got an application that you can download to your phone, and it's kind of like a social media site for people who enjoy the outdoors and just really anything to do with outdoor recreation. But I don't want to paint it with that broad brush. I mean, it's just, there's so much more to it. You can track your activity, your fitness. It's got a cooking section to it. It's got, of course, hunting. It's got hiking. You name it. It's got all kinds of. You can even track your shooting for archery. I mean, it's just an outstanding application. He is also the owner of the Restless Native Podcast, and if you've never heard of that, I mean, you've got to listen to it. It's a great podcast. But I had a great conversation with Brad. We talk about, obviously, Go Wild, a little bit of the Restless Native. We talk about a few episodes in the Restless Native. We get into high fence hunting. We get into conservation and hunting and just, all kinds of different things. So it really was a great conversation, and I really appreciate Brad for coming on and humoring me on my little podcast here. And I like I said, I just really appreciate it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this conversation between Brad and myself. And as always, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you email me at aaron@archeryoutdoorsman.com.
Dude, it's great having you on. I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. I've been listening to your, been listening to the Restless Native quite a bit, and
cool.
Obviously I've been on Go Wild quite a bit, and
yeah, burning it up.
I don't know about burning it up, but I know I'm giving you quite a few downloads.
That's good, man. I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to hear.
Yeah. So how did you get going with all this? I mean, you seem like kind of a marketing guru. So
passionate about marketing. Yeah, I was in advertising agencies for about 7 years. So before that I was a freelance photographer. I ran my own wedding photo agency for a while. People don't know that. It's a surprising thing for people, like, wait, the outdoor guy shot weddings, but I did. I made good money doing that. And I actually took a pay cut from doing that to get into advertising as a social media manager. So I got my start in social media, and I worked up to a PR position with an agency, and then I got fired, which is a story for another day. But I think I tell that on Restless Native with Tony.
Yeah, I think I
Tony
heard that
Bynum.
part.
Yeah, when Tony Bynum, because Tony was like, "Why do you always tell people you got fired? Why aren't you embarrassed about it?" I'm like, "I'm not embarrassed about it. I didn't do anything wrong." So that's a cool story if people want to go hear that. But I got into another small agency, and I worked my way up there from copywriter to I was doing video, and then I became associate creative director and creative director. So I've kind of done all the different aspects at an agency, and then I managed a team of designers and writers for a while. So I put in a good amount of time, and working at a small agency, you can learn really quick, and you can learn a lot from working on different accounts. And I always say at an agency, you get to learn on somebody else's dime. You get to go screw it up on somebody else's budget. So I screwed up a lot of other people's projects, I'm sure, to be able to get to where we could hit the ground running good with Go Wild.
Thanks for paying for my
thanks. It's kind of like paying for my education. Actually, I got paid, but no, I mean, that's the nature of it. We built a really great company. I think the revenue for that agency tripled while I was there, and I'm not taking credit for that. The agency overall had a great team, and I got to watch it scale from me and two other people were the marketing and creative team to where in creative alone we had like 8 people when I left. So it was a good experience for me, and it really primed. There's no way I could have done this without working at that last agency.
Oh yeah, it makes it so much easier to get things done when you have people around you that pretty much know the things that you don't, right?
Yeah, well, I got to learn a lot, but like when the funny thing is, I kind of got spoiled in that I had a great team, and then I moved over to Go Wild, and I don't have a team at all like I had there. Like I had people to help. I had this awesome team that could help with literally any design, social media tactic, media planners and account people, and then we go here, and I was the first one to go full time, and so I'm the salesperson, I'm the accounts person, I'm the person posting on social media, I'm trying to project manage and trying to do it all. And then Chris comes on full time, and Donovan and Zach, and then you get rolling, and now we got a whole team, and we're getting ready to have. We're gonna have a dozen people soon, so it's rolling now. But to think about where we were in those early days, that experience, having that experience in marketing and creative really made this possible.
So how long ago was that you guys started it? Because I guess I had this thought that Go Wild was kind of in the works for maybe a fair amount of time, like years, and then all of a sudden just started to now blossom into something.
Yeah, it's kind of like a band. When you find out about them, everybody says they blew up overnight, but you don't see all the tiny bars they played at for all those years, building up their small audience, right? Tyler Childers is a great example of that. Everybody's finding out about this great new kid from Kentucky, but I've been listening to him since he was, had under 1,000 downloads on or listens on Spotify. We're the same way, man. We've been doing this since 2016 was when the co-founders decided to, that fall, it was actually in like August, I was scouting for deer and had the idea, went home, started doing some research on it, decided I wanted to do it, talked to my wife, it's an important step for anybody trying to start a business, make sure your family's sold. It did take me a while to convince her that this was good, going to be a good idea, but I got the co-founders in, and I knew I needed certain talents, so we pulled them together. Two people I knew immediately who I wanted to work with, and then didn't know a developer, and I thought I was going to have a hard time finding somebody, but honestly the first guy that I really met with, Chris, ended up being perfect, and he was a big hiker, and I don't mean like casually hiking, like they've done trips around the world to go hiking, and he loves it. They go for like out all the time, even with their kid. Like they were really great about getting their kid out after he was born and taking him on hikes. And Chris was super into this idea. So what's funny is like I was the only one that hunted, and even on fishing, like nobody else was really passionate about those aspects of it. But Donovan used to hunt and was super into firearms. And then Zach likes to get outside and he's kind of a casual outdoorsman and like to hike. And then Chris, hardcore hiker, was interested in hunting, So the team that we put together, we were able to build that product from 2016, the fall of 2016. We finally get Chris in December, and then we launched a beta 6 months later. So that's really fast for building a product. Like we built Go Wild V1 in 6 months, and keep in mind that's like from concept to beta. So we didn't even know what the heck we were going to build at first. It's like, okay, we want to build a platform. What do we want it to be? Do we want to do mapping? Like we're literally having the conversation of like, do we want to compete? We didn't even know who Onyx was at the time, 2016. Like I had no idea who was the player in that space. So we decided we didn't want to go that route. We wanted to have something that people would use year round. So that helped us say, okay, then this isn't just a hunting app. Now it's hunting and fishing. Well, most people that hunt and fish like to do other things too. We should include those so that, you're having these conversations with each other literally in my basement over pizza and beers. And over enough of those, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, this is how this should function. And then we came up with the trophy idea. And like little by little, all this stuff kind of got wrapped into it. So 6 months, we get a beta, test for 3 months, and we launched in September on iPhone only. And then 6 months later after that, we launched on Android. And, now this January, we launched a Garmin app, and got other stuff in the works now too. I mean, we'll have another big product release this year that'll be just as big as anything else we've done. And so that's kind of our approach, is like, I don't want to get stagnant and stale. There are competitors out there that look exactly like they did when we launched in 2017, and they've added no new value. And that's, for me, like, I'm not doing any service to, we have thousands of people that use our product every day, and my job is to talk to them, know what they want, and listen to what they want, and make decisions on what we can provide well. A lot of people suggest to do mapping and in ways that would put us, competing with an OnX. And for us, that's already being done really well. So I want to find places where I can add value to your life in a way that you couldn't do on another platform. So we've iterated, we update all the time. I mean, people probably notice if they have the app, there's an update coming about every 2 weeks, or maybe a month at most if it's a big release. But we're hyper passionate about making this literally the best app for the outdoors enthusiast.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing you hit on, and I want to talk about that in a minute because I absolutely love this, and we'll get into it a little bit. Is your trophy aspect of things. I love the take on it because it's not like the Pope and Young or Boone and Crockett score, but just say I really like that. But one thing you said too, you were talking about, hey, it went from hunting to fishing to hiking, all these different things in the beta section of it. At some point when you guys started listing all these things out, were you like, how the heck are we going to do this?
Yeah, there's been a lot of those times. Yeah, there's been a lot of those conversations. And early, we for us, it was providing seasonal or non-seasonal value. I wanted to be evergreen. I wanted to have something you'd come back to. And we knew, I mean, if you're a hunter, if you're only a hunting app, there's a big swing. Honestly, a lot of this came down to business decisions. You can't build a business model around something that drops off 80% in the summer or in the spring, and that's what our competitors that are only hunting apps see. So, and I've heard that data from them. That's really hard to have. That's like a big box store that only makes its revenue on Black Friday. They're all trying to figure out how to level out that revenue throughout the year. So for us, that part of it was actually less of a conversation around, at first, it was less around like just the conversation of what do people like. It was how are we going to build something that we're passionate about that can help us quit our jobs and do this because we love it. So, it's one thing to dream and do something, but if you're going to pay the bills, I've got kids. If I'm going to buy diapers and food, I got to figure out something that over time is going to make money, right? So that was a big part of it. And the other thing that the research said, from all of the hunting and fishing research we studied, and there's a big report came out in 2016 or 17. Most people have overlap in this, and we've found this to be true with our audience too. There's about 65% overlap in people that hunt and fish. So very few people are actually one thing or the other. So that's where I think a lot of these other platforms are maybe missing the mark a little bit. I love pizza, but I do not want an app that only talks about pizza. I want variety in my life. And it's the same. That sounds like a silly example, but you start to think of a recipe app that was only about pizza. It's like, okay, an activity tracking and social media platform that's only about this one thing I do for a couple months a year. Even hunters want to see about more than that. And I know this to be true because when they use our platform, come spring, right now, what do you think they're doing? They're foraging. They're going out and hunting morels, and they're going to be hitting walleye, and they're going to be chasing bass, and we have the data now to prove that hypothesis was right. And it's actually from the business side too. That's one of the things advertisers are interested in, is that we can actually help them with brand awareness year round because our audience doesn't see these crazy swings.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right on that, and I've seen it from my own personal side of things, archery outdoorsman. I felt like, and I had been thinking about it for a while, but I felt like I had hamstrung myself by just the archery outdoorsman side of things because I didn't, I think of myself more as a conservationalist, not just a hunter or not just a fisherman or something like that. So when I came up with the name, I started to notice exactly what you're talking about. Things start to drop off a little bit outside of, the main hunting season and all that. And so that's why, I started adding in some of the extracurricular things that that I do, like beekeeping and removing bees from people's walls and stuff like that. But had I thought about that ahead of time, I probably would have come up with a different name.
Yeah. Well, I went down I did branding for years in advertising, and this was a branding project for me at first. That's the part I just went to what I knew. It wasn't like, there was a moment of literally Googling how to raise money for a company because I didn't know how to do any of that either. But I went to what I knew, and part of that was, the branding part. And I had names for apps that were very hunting focused or hunt and fish focused. And I just kind of had a realization, like a moment of clarity, even before I brought in the co-founders. I think the name was already decided when I even approached the first co-founder. I knew I wanted something that could scale and be something for that huge number. 102 million people do something outdoors every year. And I wanted to be able to create an app that even if you didn't like to hunt and fish, you could still use it. And, you've seen the app now. There's people posting in nature photography. They're talking about state parks. So we did that. Like, I feel like we had a hypothesis. We proved it out. Like, at this point, it's about scaling that out and where can we add more trails that add more niche. Like, one thing we're looking at, and I think we're going to add, is a motorsports trail. There's a lot of our audience likes to ride motorcycles or soup up hot rods, and no, that's not directly related to the outdoors. But I always say, we're not an outdoors app. We're an app for people who like the outdoors, and keeping in mind that those people have other interests too that we can, have ancillary value to. So, I can think of like 12 people off the top of my head that will geek out when we launch a motorsports trail. So, we're always looking at those things that we can bring in. We added farming a few months ago because tons of people were posting farming content. That's their livelihood. So, and there was conversations going on around that. So we added that into the app.
Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant. It's more of a recreational thing. And I've told so many people about the app just personally, because I'm like, man, this is, and I think the thing that appealed to me the most outside of the, just the broad scope of just everything I like to do is everybody is so supportive.
Yeah. It's hard to explain to people. They think I'm making that up when I tell them.
Yeah. And that's something that, one of my buddies, I was like, dude, you gotta check out this app. You don't catch a bunch of flack off of, and I don't want to say that and then it come back to bite me.
I've been saying it for 2 years and it hasn't bitten me yet. Literally people echo it all the time. You can post a doe on our app and nobody's going to, make fun of you. You can post a spike. I shot a spike this year in Texas at a game, at a ranch. I went down and I thought I was going to, I'd never bow hunted before. So I taught myself, I learned archery through the Go Wild app, literally asking questions and learning from people like Jimmy Glazer, who would take time to send me like paragraph long messages on what I like my form, and Garrett Weaver, who you may have seen his podcast.
Garrett is like a beast when it comes to geeking out on archery. Yeah.
I met him through Go Wild. So Garrett has given me like personal advice, and I'll sometimes text him now if I'm like getting ready to do something I need advice from him. And so I kind of crowdsourced my education in archery, and then I went down to Texas. It was supposed to be a doe hunt with Jeremiah Dowdy. Are you familiar with Jeremiah?
I have heard of him. I'm not
from Field to Plate.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with him. No.
So Jeremiah is a chef, and he's a wild game chef, and he's really passionate about teaching people how to hunt. So I had killed, I had hunted my share of deer. I've actually gotten a couple like really nice Kentucky bucks. I've been proud of that. And it's not like I had never hunted before, but I had never bow hunted before. So there's a learning curve there. And I had gotten pretty comfortable with my bow out to even 40 yards, and felt like I was ready, and went down to Texas all thinking I was going to kill a doe on a meat hunt. And then this like smaller spike showed up, and that's what the guide wanted me to shoot. And I'm like, okay, like at first I'm thinking like that thing's smaller than the doe I was looking for. But I was pumped. I shot it. I got my first deer with a bow. And I had no hesitation to post that on Go Wild because I knew people would not look at that and be like, I can't believe you would shoot a spike. It was complete celebration. Like, everybody was happy for me, and could like truly see the joy that I'd like done this thing that I worked for essentially like 10 months on, learning how to shoot a bow and putting in the practice and the hours to do that, and they appreciate it. And I mean, like, that's my best story for that, is that I literally did the thing that you get made fun of on other platforms, and it was celebrated. People understood it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that kind of comes back to the trophy aspect of Go Wild is, it's not that Pope and Young, because your spike would have scored like a 6 maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
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 But on Go Wild, it's different. It's all encompassing. Okay, well, how did you shoot it? Okay, and I think I've heard you talk about it on the Restless Native. A little bit of what you guys envision for the algorithm.
I can walk through what that is. Yeah, so that was like one of those basement conversations. We like started with the problem of hey, why do people feel the need to chastise other hunters when they kill something? And we're all just talking about that. And well, maybe it's because one thing that I saw a ton of was people that would make fun of people for killing a big deer. It's like, oh great, what farm did you kill it on? And so one thing I think stems from that. In some ways, it's jealousy. Like, it's got to be, right? Like, this person went out and did something that you've worked really hard, and you might have killed an 8-point. So we started thinking through that of like, well, what are the other things besides the antlers that we really should be thinking through? And one thing that was clear to us is the distance of the shot and what you're shooting. So if we went out right now and hunted. Well, not right now because that'd be called poaching. But let's say it's in deer season. Let's say it's in deer season and we kill the same size deer. And I did mine with a rifle at 50 yards and you did yours with a bow at 50 yards. The app looks at that and it knows that you did on that metric alone, and the score looks at a lot of different stuff depending on the species, and it does cater to each species uniquely. But it looks at that and says, okay, based on that distance and the weapon, I know that Aaron was the better, like you win in that category because you did it with the bow, right? At 50 yards with a bow is a lot harder than 50 yards with a rifle. So yeah, there's always circumstances. There can be circumstances where, yeah, maybe 50 yards with a bow was easier than a rifle because I was looking into the sun and shooting through brush and whatever, but then maybe I shouldn't have took the shot. Like, no, but there's
it's hard to write an algorithm for something like that.
Exactly. So we look at things that we can draw conclusions from. And the cool thing that the way Zach built that, people ask us, why do you look at length and weight? Because a lot of people don't care how much a whitetail weighed. But we try to capture that data if we can. We don't require it, but if we can, because it actually is the best way to look at the genetics of an animal in terms of size. So then Zach can start to say, well, if this person killed a turkey, and we look at its trophy metrics, its beard, its spurs, and we can start to draw some parallels that he can use in the algorithm. So it's kind of funny. Some people will complain like, well, why did I catch a bass that's worth almost as much as his turkey? Like, this thing's stupid. It's like, well, you haven't quite grasped the concept. Or I'll see people that say, well, I logged a deer that was bigger than his and I didn't get as many points. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're only thinking of the antlers. We're looking at a lot more than that. And, over time, we're going to be able, once we get enough data, and we're getting pretty close to this, I'll be able to start telling you, for your state, you were in the top 10 percentile of people that shot a deer this year in terms of the Go Wild score. So the value of that is nowhere near done. And so that's just one way we know we can use this data. I mean, another thing we're looking at, we capture more data than any state agency that I'm aware of on
I'm glad you brought that up.
So like, there's going to be a time when we figure out, I'm starting to try to talk to some biologists now to see how we could work with them on using that, because, Kentucky, for example, you call in a deer and it's like, what county did you do? What, did it have antlers? Were they more than 11 inches apart? like it's a pitiful amount of data that I could give a biologist infinitely more data anonymized. I'm not looking for like, this is Aaron's deer. It's more of like, here is a deer that, like, here is the general averages, or here are the top end of what deer sizes were. And we could really help biologists get a better understanding in a way that truly has impacts on conservation, because they could do better planning maybe if we get enough volume of people logging on this app. And dude, the first year we had there's a fun infographic that we posted. I mean, it was like, God, I got to pull it up now just to find it, but there was like hundreds of thousands of pounds of meat harvested logged on Go Wild over time.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I'll have to find it here. We'll keep chatting a little bit as I look it up, but I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Oh, here it is. Of 720,000 quarter pound burgers could have been made from the Go Wild app, and all the meat. And we had a way that wasn't just like direct meat conversion. That was like 40% of the animal harvested. We had 5,000 bass logged in our first year. 18,000 antler tines were logged on Go Wild. 13,000 trophies, all in our first year. So then there was like and keep in mind, we didn't launch Android until for half of that. So 11,700 hours spent hunting, 15,500 spent fishing, over 60,000 total hours tracked. So
holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, that was, and we are far larger now and far more active than we were back then. So we'll do another one of these this year to see kind of what's happened in between. But that's pretty cool to see how active and how much data we're collecting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you got into the state agency side of things, because I had heard that also when you were on one of your episodes of the Restless Native, was where you were talking about, being able to provide, biologists with certain information about certain species or, whatever. Did you, when you guys started that, was that an ancillary benefit that you guys came up with, or did you actually consult with biologists or in those areas, in the wildlife areas, about that?
It's a good question. Nobody's ever asked that. We did research on it, and I did talk to some state agency people. It turns out state agencies are antiquated and did not really grasp what we were trying to do, at least the ones I was talking to. I won't shame anybody in particular, but the conversations we had early, people were like, well, why would anybody want to log a deer on a phone? And it's like they didn't. You're kind of talking to a generation that didn't quite understand why this would be valuable. So we took a different route and just started doing research on what was being collected at agencies, even looking at the app. There's a couple agencies that have apps. Most of them are mediocre at best, but they've probably gotten better over time. I haven't done the homework on that in a few years on what they're collecting and how they're using it. But from what we could tell from our own research, this was something that would infinitely be more have more information than what they do. And the other thing the state agencies don't do is none of them are tracking the data the same. So we're capturing the data in a way, like, data is only as good as what you can process. And if it's formatted differently, it's not, you're comparing apples to oranges, but even worse than that, it's just literally useless if it's not tracked in the same way. So we have a homogenized system across 50 states, across the world really, but like at least across 50 states. And we can actually look at this in a way that I can truly compare Kentucky's harvest to Tennessee or any of the surrounding states or California or whatever you want to do. Now, as we grow and get volume, that becomes more and more meaningful. And again, I want to stress to people, this would all be like anonymized. People don't know this probably, but like your credit card company sells your credit card data. They sell this. It's like they take your name and home address off of it, but it's they know your age. They know more about you than you would even believe, and they're selling that anonymized data so that marketers can learn to build profiles from people that typically buy these things. We would be looking at anonymizing the data and just look at the species specifically. So it's not like we're getting into anything really personal or creepy. This would be for the benefit of these agencies to be able to use that data and learn.
Oh, absolutely. And until I started really getting into Go Wild and stuff like that, I have never measured, and to this point, I still haven't measured the length of the animals. And, I do a lot of backpack hunting and stuff. So measuring the weight is, really hard to do. I just I have to guesstimate, if you're taking it out in pieces,
Yeah.
But I'm getting ready to go on a hog hunt next month. And so something that I'm actually going to do is bring a tape out with me so that I can get as much true information, as I can. I thought,
I see you got a nice big hog behind you there.
Yeah, I've got one over here and then one actually on the other side. Actually, they're both logged on Go Wild. Yeah.
Oh, are they? Cool. I'll have to check those out after this.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, man, it's you got a great thing going there. So what are you guys looking forward to other than, just the trophy aspect of things? Because there's so much with your platform. I don't want to call it that, but a platform. What does the future hold?
Yeah, short of telling you, we are working on this giant project right now that'll launch this year. I can't get into that exactly, but I mean, really what we're looking at is the market shift right now in digital, and where are there blocks that are happening, and how companies are treating sportsmen and women, and the industry as a whole is kind of getting bullied out. And so we're beyond just posting a picture is one thing, but what are the other ways that we can provide value that's been shut out of these main platforms right now? That's really what gets us excited, is creating something that people can say, finally. I mean, that's one of the biggest responses we get when people sign up for the platform. Everybody gets a message from me and a couple of my co-founders or business partners, and we automate that part of it. But when people reply back, that's really us that's responding to each one of those. And what I learned from this is the hypothesis that people are being bullied and banned. And in 2016, I was pretty early in realizing some of this was going on and predicting that this was going to continue to grow. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm just saying there were a lot of people that told me this was not a problem we're solving for. And now I can tell you probably a third of the people I message say it is so nice to be able to post somewhere and not worry about being made fun of, or to worry about the anti-hunters attacking me. And I don't know if all of those are direct experiences or if they're perceived. There's so much talk about this in our community now about anti-hunters that I sometimes wonder if it's not theoretical, that maybe they haven't had that experience, but they feel more comfortable. But at the end of the day, if you perceive Instagram to be a place that you can't post and share that story, what do you think you're going to do with that story? You're not going to share it. So I think of I like to think of what we're doing as a campfire, and campfires are where we learn to celebrate hunts. It's where we developed our language. It's where we had fellowship with our families, and so much of humanity grew around that campfire. And social media has kind of taken the spark away from hunters, and we're looking to bring that back. I mean, we're looking to give them a place, no matter what they're doing, that they can celebrate their hunt or their fishing trip, or it could just be camping, but to give them a place to do that unapologetically. So we're looking across the digital space and how to apply that.
Yeah, it's very what's the word? It's very organic from what I've seen, like, Instagram or Facebook, when you put out a post, yeah, you can send it out to the public, but for the most part, you have to follow somebody to see the post that they make.
Right.
And with Go Wild, and I could be wrong on this, but it doesn't seem that way to me. If I put out a post, I can get tons of people that don't follow me.
Yeah.
And they'll provide feedback and stuff like that. Like there was a guy that I don't follow, not because I don't like the guy or anything like that. I just don't.
Sure. Yeah, there's tons of people I interact with that I don't follow.
Yeah, and he was asking about I think mountain biking trails is what he was looking for in a certain area. So I sent him a few screenshots of some trails and stuff like that in an area that I didn't know of personally, like from personal experience, but just from like Onyx maps and stuff like that. And just like he had a whole thread of different people saying, oh, you can go here, you can go there. And it's extremely helpful, if you're looking for information. And who knows, that guy might not have been a hunter. And that feeds into the whole, changing the mentality of hunters is, it seems like if you show that, we're not just bloodthirsty killers, we're people too. We all like the same things. Then, maybe they're not so bad. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's actually something that I did a in-person interview on site at REI, and I got into a long conversation with the managers at REI, and they were not hunters. And
what's their perception of hunting?
So I was extremely surprised by this. So I was being interviewed about my book, and the book is 10 Rules for Finding a Good Hunting Partner.
Yeah, I got it sitting right next to me. I told you it's going to be a bit. I haven't read it yet because I'm traveling nonstop, but I'm looking forward to checking it out.
No problem. But so when the person who was interviewing me came up and said, hey, I want to interview this guy in your store about this book, they were like, okay, we'll think about it. And so they thought about it, and they were like, well, our motto at REI is outdoors for all. So hunters enjoy the outdoors too. So they were fairly open-minded, and they said, okay, we'll bring them in. So I had this long conversation with them, and I showed up about an hour and a half early. And so there was like no pause time between their questions, my answers. And, it was just a very organic, polite conversation. And that was something that we had talked about, was the gap that was between non-hunters and hunters in mentality. And I was like, you guys are doing all of the exact same things that I am. The only difference is I'm out looking for an animal, and I'm trying to harvest that animal to put food on my table. Outside of that, we're all camping, we're all hiking, we're all using the same kind of gear, we're all doing trail nutrition. Everything is the same. So why not, instead of having this separation of culture, why don't we all find a way to come together? And, we're all looking for increasing conservation of public lands and increasing conservation of wildlife and stuff like that. Hunters provide billions of dollars towards that. Why not come together with that? You don't have to agree with hunting personally, but we're all preserving the same things.
Yep.
And they were actually very, very amicable to the idea of, and I think I had mentioned it, of having a seminar for bridging the gap. And that's what we would call it, is bridging the gap. And it would be all encompassing, but they were very, very amicable to the idea. And they actually invited me to come and do a class in the store and throughout a few stores in the Southeast.
That's cool, man. Well, congrats on that. It sounds really exciting. I'm always interested to hear what some of those fringe people, and I call that fringe because, like you said, they're doing 90% of what we do. But I think people like you and those interactions that people can have in our app, just like the mountain biker guy, those are what brings people in to realize that they had misperceptions of what hunting is. So that's a big part of what we hope happens within our platform. And some criticism of what we've done, it has been, if you pull people into a vacuum, how are you ever going to teach people about hunting? But 90% of the app fishes, and 74% are into hunting. So there's obvious some there's just some room there for those the most likely people you're going to convert are the people like these REI guys, the people that are already out there doing it. They're interacting with nature, and you put it in the right perspective of, hey, what if you could do this and come back with food for the year? Thinking through it that way, that's going to resonate with them, and that's talking about it in the right way. I think those are the right conversations to have. I think we actually facilitate that very well. I've seen, I can name people that got into the app for fishing and turned into hunters. I've seen people that downloaded the app because they wanted to learn to hunt, and they've crowdsourced their own education for free from very smart people that have been there for 30 years and done it, and now they're looking to pass on their education. So that's what the platform does really well. I want to go back and answer your question about what's coming. I gave you like a really high level non-answer of where like philosophically we're going and how we think through things, but I want to give you some specifics that are pretty exciting, and maybe some of these maybe I haven't said about or talked about, or some of them maybe I have. I tend to forget what was said where, but so with activity tracking, so when you go out in the backcountry, if you wanted to track for the day, however long you hiked, and you hunted for like, let's say 10 hours, you if your phone's battery can hang up hold on for this long, you can track your mileage, right? So with your phone, you can use activity tracking on Go Wild. Start your activity, it'll map your elevation, what the temperature was, how many miles you did, and so that's where it stands today. Over time, we want to take that activity to help you be better at what you're doing. So something we could do fairly easily with some time is to look at your activity and compare it to the community. So I could say, hey, Aaron, you have scouted less than 5 days this year, and typically people that scout 8 days or more are 50% more likely to kill a deer. Those are the kind of we can start to use the things we know you like to help you get better. And that's very much, I don't have a timeline on when that's going to happen, but as all of the data we collect, we're looking at how we can help you organize and better understand that data to get better at whatever you love. So the archery tracking, for example, we track.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's cool. So it's, you're kind of disrupting a little bit with that because people aren't used to tracking that. But over time, the value in that's going to be, okay, I got significantly better at archery this year. How do I quantify that beyond like just feel good, right? So I could see like, oh, well, I shot 10,000 arrows this year, which was 50% more than I did last year, and I can now shoot out an additional 17 yards, and my groups are 20% tighter. We'll be able to start helping you draw those comparisons. We don't do as much of that right now. Today is much more of we've got a product into the market so we can start capturing data, and I want to help people use that data in 2020. Maybe by the end of the year we'll start to have some of that captured. There's some things that even I've kind of talked about that we're going to do, that this new big project we're working on is kind of steamrolled. It's all hands on deck to get that done and trying to get it launched up by hunting season. But beyond that, we're going to come back to activity tracking and really building that out. So one of the exciting things for me is nobody else is even playing in that space. First of all, we got like over 40 ways to track activity in Go Wild. Some of that is GPS tracking. Some of that is saying like I went camping for 2 days. You can log that time on the app, or it's I smoked barbecue for 12 hours, and it adds a fun layer. And then I'll see that sometimes, and I'll say, holy crap, you smoked a pork butt for 18 hours, or like I'm like, wow, that's like normally I'm 12, and I'll start a conversation with people that way. Or crazy old Ricky, I'll be like, Ricky, man, you went fishing for like over 5 hours the last 5 days. You're awesome, dude. Like, good for you. Like you get kind of you learn from the post type, which is that Ricky went bass fishing today. You can start to learn things in a different way than just honestly like the mindless swipe that happens on other platforms. We're trying to combat that a little bit. You've seen it. We have various post types. There's different, like you can do a trophy, you can do a time log, you can talk about podcasts, you can log an activity. Activity posts look different than anything else you're doing. They got a map you can scroll through. There's data. If they logged it with Garmin, there's a heart rate, there's recipes, there's posts from Go Wild that are long form posts. They might be articles, they might be giveaways. It's like, holy crap, Instagram has one. It's like photo, video, one visual piece. And we're trying to get people to slow down and digest content and to have conversation. Again, campfire mentality. I have been extremely opposed to condensing our copy. Have you noticed that we don't condense long stories on the app?
Oh yeah.
Like if you type a caption out on Instagram and it's 100 words, what do? They condense it down to this tiny little snippet, and you have to rely that somebody's going to click that to expand it. Well, my opinion is if somebody took the time to type that out, it's probably something that's important. So the reason Instagram does that is it makes a nice little, like, pretty tie up with a bow package that everything's consistent. It keeps a better flow to the app. And I understand all the reasons they don't do what we do, but I'm passionate about saying, no, you know what, this person took the time to do that, to type that out. It's probably something that you would want to see. And if my algorithm can't solve for that, like maybe it's 100 words and it's all dumb. But if we can't help you sort that to show you the relevant stuff, then that's a fail on us. I'm not going to cut your short story short because of to keep things tidy. So as we grow, we'll be looking at ways to take the data that we capture to help you tell those stories and to do it in a way that you haven't done before.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Going back to the capturing archery, is there any possible plans to maybe get more competition archers and stuff like that?
Yeah. We launched, like, if you use that archery tracking product right now, it's typically how a hunter looks at shooting. Like, it's by groups, and competition archers are shooting quite a bit differently than that. And we don't cater to that right now. And I need to learn more about that space before we really build a product. And I need to work with some competition archers to see what that would be. Right now, by and large, the people in our platform are shooting more like they're shooting groups. So the product caters to what 70 to 80% of the audience does. That said, we know there's people that are using it and they're still tracking, but that part of the tracking is not as relevant to them because we're looking for group inch count instead of, however, you're going to shoot your 5 separate targets. So we'll get there. I think over time, that'll probably be a different activity log. Like, it'll be like, I want to shoot 3D or for hunting or something specific to that style, and then I'll shoot target archery. Right now, we're iterating and moving on to the next thing until we can come back to improve activity tracking.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm going to go back real quick. You had mentioned the separation, that we have, and what we, as, I guess, for lack of a better word, ambassadors for the outdoors and stuff like that. What we're trying to convey. I've got to be open and honest here. I was part of the problem a little bit. The East versus West thing.
Yeah.
And actually, you would kind of open my eyes to it a little bit with the Restless Native, and I never really thought about that I was even doing this until I had heard that. And I was like, it made me think about it. But, there's this whole perception, oh, you've never hunted until you've hunted out West,
Yeah.
And I grew up in Montana and, I love to hunt out West. Actually, my last podcast, I was talking about how, honestly, I think it's harder to hunt in the East than it is in the West. There's no stalking. I mean, it's like almost impossible. And
yeah, all the prep work comes in before preseason. I mean, you have to, and it's a lot of it's kind of like a game of baseball. Like, it's a lot of mental instead of physical prowess. It's a finesse game.
Yeah, and I had never thought about that, and maybe it was because I got so dang frustrated hunting in the East. That I was like, oh, this is stupid. I'm just, I'm just sitting out here and I'm just sitting and I'm accomplishing nothing, but really when I sat down and actually thought about it, it was because I didn't know enough about maybe whitetail behavior or, turkey behavior or whatever.
You can blow a lot of time in a tree stand if you don't.
Yeah. And, I'd never really thought about that, where hunting out West, I've stalked several whitetail, just because it's wide open and you have that ability to move around and It's not as loud. You don't have nowhere near as loud. You don't have all the leaves and crunching and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the leaves are things like I have a lot of Western guys say like, well, why don't you guys just get out of the tree stand? I'm like, have you ever tried to walk through the woods in Kentucky in November? Like, good luck, bro.
Yeah, it is not happening.
No. Not stealthily. I mean, you can walk, but you're literally everything in a quarter of a mile heard you coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you've got to be like stealth ninja or have wings.
Yeah. I always make the analogy, it's like dragging a box spring through the woods. I mean, it literally, there's no quiet way to do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that was one thing I wanted to be open and honest about. You know, I myself was part of the problem. You know,
I admire that. Yeah.
You know, and there is one thing that I had heard where maybe you and I differ just slightly on is the high fence hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I agree with it and disagree with it at the same time. It's just I'd like to hear your perspective on it though.
Yeah, I think first of all there's levels to high fence. There's some stuff that goes on like the African lions that, you know, they're drugging these things and, you know, people are going out and shooting an animal that has no chance, and it's like fish in a barrel. Like there's that, and most people when they think of high fence hunting, they immediately gravitate to that kind of scenario where it's not fair and it's not this or that. But and I'm not on board with drugging a lion and going out and trying to shoot it either. So the second type that I've learned about, and that my opinion's changed on this too. A lot of these high fence operations don't operate in the way that people think they do, and I've come to appreciate the amount of effort. So the same, like, you know, Western guys, you guys are logging 20 miles a weekend or more on your scouting. It's really hard. It's hard work, and you're training, and you know, a lot putting it, and that's where a lot of that pride comes in the miles that you guys log, and it's 100% a physical challenge, but the high fence guys are putting in work too, in curating a habitat. And I've kind of realized that if it's a large enough farm, you know, dude, 10,000 acres is you can hunt a farm that's 10,000 acres sometimes on these high fence hunts. And that's like the size of public land plots where I'm from. That doesn't mean you're going to get anything. So it's not necessarily that like the hunt is always easier. And these people have curated and worked really hard to get there too. And, you know, even spending money on the property, and a lot of them are doing really good habitat work, and they're doing good conservation work. And, you know, a lot of species, there's programs that are bringing species over from Africa to go into some of these operations because it's saving the species from extinction, or helping repopulate them anyways. I want to say it's black rhinos that I think there's a program down in Texas where they've brought those back from near extinction.
Really? I didn't know about that.
I think so, man. I might be talking out of my butt a little bit, but I'm pretty sure there's a great podcast. Obviously, your audience likes podcasts. Radio Lab talks about that. It's called The Rhino Hunter, and it's with Corey Knowlton. And if people don't know who he is, he's maybe a billionaire who paid $350,000 for this rhino tag.
I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, this was maybe 2016 or 15, and it gets into those dynamics, and that podcast alone will bring you around to probably a different perception of some of those high fence hunts. Now, that said, dude, there's some gross stuff that happens. There's some people that, you know, you're hunting small, you know, dozen-acre properties, and I'm not down with that. I don't think that's a way to raise a wild animal. I do think you get into some of these larger properties, like where I hunted in Texas this year was high fence on two sides, and then I believe a low fence and no fence on the other two. And animals were coming and going, and the reason they actually were coming in and out of the wildlife refuge there, and just walking through this property. I mean, it's miles wide, and like going through that property and hearing the guys talk about how they look at their population and how the animals come and go, and how they do have some, like, I mean, they're a whitetail ranch, so they're trying to grow big deer there, but they don't want the trashy, they're not doing all the trash, what people call trashy. That's the best description I can give for all the drop tines and, all that. Like,
the bone builder.
Yeah, they're not doing all that crazy creating the freaks. They're actually trying to create a traditional South Texas whitetail, which has the high basket on it, like really tall whitetail antlers. And they're trying to get it back to what it used to be. And like when I meet guys like that, and they're literally working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, and working hard on their property to bring it to what it used to be and to have some respect. Now, obviously, they're trying to make money. I mean, he had a deer that was in a spot and we saw that was the biggest whitetail I've ever seen. And he's like, there's people in Texas that would pay $20,000 for that for their operation.
Holy cow.
I don't have I don't believe things are black and white. And I don't have a hard line answer to tell you that I'm for high fence hunting or not. I'm here to tell you most things are complex, and high fence hunting is way more complex than I think most people know. And until you've been to one that works like the one I went to in Texas, like I came into it thinking that I would not like it. And there's still parts of me that, like, I very much like hunting the way I have before, but I did not like it, if it makes sense. Like, I would go back because I had a really great time with those guys, and there was more to it than just the way they hunt. I also had a misunderstanding of why you have to feed deer in Texas. I think that is the feeding angle. I think people misunderstand. These deer live in like the nastiest of thickets of cacti and like crazy brush, and he's like, dude, do you think they would ever come? Like, if they have food in that and there's no food out of that, where do you think the deer are going to go? Like, they're not coming out. And he said that they've ran cameras, and if there's no food out, you won't see a camera for a week, or a deer for a week. And it's like they have a healthy population. So hearing him talk through that and seeing the terrain first person, I had literally pictures will not do it justice. You can't walk through the stuff that these things live in, and that changed my perspective on it too, to understand, like, okay, that's the only way that deer is literally coming out of there, is if you were to, I mean, people call it baiting or whatever, but you have to drop corn to get those deer to risk coming out of the stuff they live in, because I watched this deer herd for an hour, maybe an hour and a half before, and they were the most tuned in, hyped up whitetails I've ever seen. Watching them, like literally every little thing, they'd be, and they'd all kind of shuffle around, and I mean, like, sounds I couldn't even hear. Whereas I've sat around like Kentucky whitetails, much more curious and a little more guard is a little bit let down. Like, does will come up and check out stuff that's like, what are you stupid? You're like been like a turkey right now, checking out the thing that wasn't here yesterday when you put up a blind. And none of that with these deer. They were very tuned in. It just opened up my perspective. So I'm not here to say I'm for it or against it. I just have kind of changed my perspective of that there's layers to it, and there's certain things about it that sometimes I might disagree with. And there's other times that, like, if a busy CEO of a company doesn't have time to do all the scouting that maybe an Eastern or Western hunter can do, and doesn't have time to manage his own property, that's a really nice solution to keep somebody active as a hunter, to come in and pay $3,500 for a weekend to take a whitetail. And I'm okay with that. I think that's good. So
the only I'm with you 100% as far as the conservational aspect of it and stuff. Like, if you read or hear Ted Nugent talk about, some of his places and stuff like that, and how he manages them, and there's a whole plethora of knowledge that I think is to be gained from having to manage a place like that from a conservational aspect. And so just a small ecosystem like that is really what they're creating. Right. So really you can treat it like an experiment, I guess, so to speak, in some ways. The thing that I guess makes that hard for me, and I've got to say that I've never hunted on a high fence. I've been probably 97% public land. And granted, not everybody has time, to go out and just waste. Well, I don't want to call it a waste, but
Invest.
yeah, invest time in trying to scout and possibly coming back empty-handed. You know, which we all are taking that risk, but like the CEOs that you mentioned and stuff like that. I think the problem that I have with it is the whole black eye aspect of hunting, because it's hard for people to look at high fence hunting without seeing, hey, they're trapped in that little area, and then you got these people that are coming and paying thousands of dollars just to kill this animal and pose for it and say, oh well, I accomplished something. The mentality, I guess, is the thing that I am not quite sure that I'm on par with, and maybe I just need to go out and actually go to a high fence and really look at it.
Yeah, I think when you're there, like, you also see like the investment those guys are making. They're not making millions of dollars doing this. I mean, some of them, there's probably guides that do, but I think it'll open you up to where those dollars go. Let me ask you this: are you opposed to people coming in and paying $8,000 for an elk hunt, even if it's not high fence?
No, and the reason
the line. But you see what I'm saying? Like, all of a sudden, you said you don't like the money, but now you took the fence away, and it's like, well, okay, that feels a little better. But a lot of those,
it's not the money itself. It's I guess it's the aspect that people think about it, and maybe it's because hunting out west, you've got such a vast area of land. It's hard for me to quantify what like 1,000-acre tract looks like.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah, you lose perspective when
you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you I can't remember the exact acreage that we were on, but I mean, it was like miles wide. It took time, like it probably took half an hour to drive across it and go around it. But what's interesting is, like, you still have those same problems hunting with no fence. Like sheep hunts, you got guys sitting on herds and they have photo books and they can go through and show you, like, hey, this is Fred. You want to shoot Fred? No, here's John. You want to shoot John? I mean, it's the same culture that you have.
That's true.
And now those sheep hunts are like astronomically more than the whitetail hunts, and there's a lot more, like, you're paying literally for those guys to sit and do that. But some people would have problems with that too, and I think it's all great, man. Like, there's not this, like, I don't know whether there's a clear, like, if you peel that back and say, okay, take away the photo book, take away then you got guides just still sitting there watching. It's like, well, take away that aspect of it. Like, I don't want them to know where they are. We're going to go out and we won't know where the herd is. We're going to go find them. That's probably the point where most people would start to say, yeah, that seems a little more fair. But then, there's going to be layers of other, like, what about thermal vision? And which out west you guys have banned, like, you can't hunt with a lot of that stuff. But it's like all these different things get layered into this stuff. And I think we like to compartmentalize and say that this is good, this is bad, and I'm with you. Like, I literally lived in that, and if anything, Restless Native has opened up my mind. Talking to people like Joe Bitar. I don't know if you've listened to that episode. I think it was the second episode that he was on. I don't remember the number. I'm normally pretty good about remembering numbers, but
I can look it up. Joe Bitar.
Yeah, Joe Bitar on my show came on for his second episode. And we talked. That one was a call. I was with him in Nebraska the first time we did a show, but the second time we talked, and we talked a lot about what you're talking about. And Joe is a very smart guy. He used to run the Texas Trophy Hunters Association. He's now the executive director of Houston Safari Club Foundation. And Houston Safari Club Foundation, obviously, well, first I will disclaim that is an advertiser of Go Wild. So I'll just put that out there. But, like, I've been educated by Joe and how these guides work, and it's just you do need to be exposed to it. Like, at a certain point, like, it comes down to, once you're around it, it feels different than how you thought it was going to. For a lot of people, they thought they wouldn't like hunting and killing an animal, and then when they actually were with somebody that showed them how to do it ethically, it's like, I don't feel like I thought I would. I didn't feel shame like I thought I would. I felt sadness for a moment. I felt reverence for the animal, but I didn't feel sad. I felt proud. some people struggle with how to feel about that. And I think it's the same thing we're talking about. Like, there's definitely parts of high fence hunting. If it was probably like 500 acres high fence, I would probably not feel the same way. Like, I probably would have a distaste of, and I'm just making up numbers, and I'm probably a little bit more able to think of how much land that is than you, because I hunt like a 70-acre farm, so I can be like, okay, like 6 times that, Yeah, I wouldn't want to hunt a high fence on that, because it would feel a little bit more like a cage. But people do it, and you know what? If they're doing it legally, it's not for me. That's kind of where it comes down to for me. I might not want to do it, but I will fully support your right to do it. And until it gets outlawed, I'll believe in you that you should be able to do it. Now, if you're going to pile up dead deer in the back of a truck with beer cans and post that on Instagram, I'm going to come after you and call you out for it. Like that part of the story, like, I don't care if you hunted out west, east, wherever. Like, to me, that's a much clearer line of how we represent it. Like, to your point, you can do high fence hunts on behind the scenes and nobody ever know you were there. Like, you can do that privately, but when it's the people and how they present hunting on social media, that's where I'm going to be a little more vocal, and I might have some problems with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for the record, some people don't know me, they haven't heard me. I'm not saying don't ever post a grip and grin. I'm not going down that path. I don't post them personally. I have before. Honestly, like, a big part of that is my start to Go Wild. Actually, I just released a podcast about that very thing I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to that one. It sounds like you've heard a few, but I read my article that I wrote for Houston Safari Club. The whole thing. Thank you. That whole article was about that, like posting a grip and grin and getting trolled by somebody I knew, and and how that inspired me to create Go Wild in a lot of ways. And so it's also a conflicted thing, but I do think that we all need to be PR people for hunting and think about how our actions represent something we love, and we need to realize that there's a shift in the tides. I just wrote another article for Houston Safari Club, and there's scientific research that says the more people move into cities, the more empathetic they are of animals, and the least likely they are to support what we're doing. So this is changing at an incredibly rapid rate. That's why places like the Bay Area, California, Arizona, honestly, a lot of Western states are being more empathetic. They're called mutualists, where they see the animal as having mutual rights, and a traditionalist might see that it's my right to hunt this animal. So there's fewer and fewer traditionalists. It's shifting to mutualists. This is happening incredibly fast. So every time you post your grip and grin, you're fueling a mutualist in the making.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was just I just saw the caption on it, but Sportsman's Alliance just came out with, I want to say it was in New York, where they're trying to pass a bill that basically equates the top 5 in Africa at bringing
big
more,
5,
to like child abuse or something like that on a penile level. For if you bring one of those in, they were talking about how it's basically on the same level penalty wise as child abuse. And I'm gonna say that my grandpa he went to Africa, and he hunted in Africa and all that kind of stuff, and I don't see why. I personally don't see a difference between hunting in Africa, Brazil, United States, wherever you're hunting. I don't see an animal as having any more rights than any other animal. To me, if you're using that animal as a resource, doesn't the animals in Africa need to be conservationally managed just like the animals in the United States or British Columbia or anything like that? It's
right.
Kind of interesting.
Dude, it's really interesting. I tell you what, I did not come on here to keep plugging my podcast, but I had a conversation with Olivia Opry, who, funny enough, is a Miss America contestant, but she is a conservationist, and that one's episode 34. I looked it up this time to be able to refer to it, but she knows more about hunting in Africa than anybody I've ever spoken with, and she completely disintegrates these conversations. And one of the best spoken people I've ever. In fact, she's so well spoken. My intro on that show was like, I swear to God, this is not scripted. It sounds like it is, but she's had these conversations so many times that it almost sounds rehearsed because she's so articulate. But she's a great person to listen to hear, like, elephants aren't endangered. Okay, there's areas where they're like 4 times the actual recommended population rate, and we get so emotional about animals that are on our kids' pajamas, and that are in our kids' children's book. And for the love of God, like, every time they make a movie, the characters have to be animals, and we start to associate with them in a way that is not healthy or natural.
Yeah.
And we don't see lions as predators. You know how the kids in African villages grow up learning about lions.
Yeah.
Stay there away from them.
Taken.
Right. Yeah. So these are people making decisions about stuff they don't know anything about. They're making emotional decisions. And Sportsman's Alliance, in my opinion, in all that I know of them, and actually I got a podcast coming up with these guys. They're coming down to Louisville to chat with me. But in all of my work and with different agencies, they're one of the best at approaching this from a not neutral. They obviously have they're very objective, and yes, they're going to defend hunting, but they dissect this stuff down in a way that nobody else does. It's not fear mongering. They're not using inflammatory language. It's very cut and dried. I'm a member of Sportsman's Alliance for that reason. I believe in what they're doing and their support of hunting. And very few organizations have the ability to change legislation that they do. I mean, if you haven't listened to if people aren't familiar with them, Stephen Rennell has done a couple good episodes with them and really dug into how they do the legislative process. And Evan, the president, just incredibly sharp. And they got this down to a science. When something like this New York bill hits, which I'm looking at now, it's on their homepage. When this hits, they act. Then usually they already know it's coming, and it's pretty interesting because they'll win a battle and then they know it's going to come back. They just don't know when. But it's really interesting to see how their organization handles stuff like this. But these
it's
animals,
very cyclic.
Yeah,
I mean it really is.
Yeah, it is for sure. So if people want to, the question comes up of like, what can you do? Well, $35 a year, I think it is. I might be wrong, but it's about that. It's about the same level that all these nonprofits operate. Like, you can go support Sportsman's Alliance and help them. You know what? When they ask you to upgrade your membership, do it. That's the best $50 you're ever going to spend. Like, if you enjoy being a hunter, you need to support organizations like them. National Wild Turkey Federation does a great job in bringing in new hunters. Like whatever you're passionate about in hunting, if you're not supporting a couple organizations at least that are in line with that, all we're talking about is the price of a couple turkey decoys, or it's not like this is an insane spend a year, and these are the people on the front lines fighting the good fight, and really National Wild Turkey Federation, I'm a member primarily because of their recruitment efforts, and looking at what they do across the board there, like, I'm proud to spend my $35-$50 whatever it is. So sorry, I got on a little bit of a rant there.
No, that's fine. I absolutely love Sportsman's Alliance and backcountry hunters and anglers. And to put it in perspective, like, if you talk about S47 that just came out, right? Mm-hmm. That's what, 700 and something pages of a bill. I mean,
which one is that? What's the bill? Sorry, I need to.
It's basically a public lands bill talking about water access and.
Oh, sorry, that I didn't identify the number, but that's the one everybody's talking about right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got so many aspects of all these bills, and then you've got riders and all that kind of stuff, and that's something that Sportsman's Alliance and I'm pretty sure BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and maybe National Wild Turkey Federation or Foundation does it too, but they actually have people that is their job, is to look at these different bills and go through it and say, okay, well, what's good for hunting, what's good for water access, what's good for land access, so on and so forth, and making people aware of all of these different things, and then lobbying to change the things that might be detrimental to outdoor recreation, so it is well worth it. Like you said, I mean, $35 a year. I mean, really, if you can't afford $35 a year and you're out there hunting, every weekend or whatever, I really don't know what to say about that.
I agree. So Senate bill, that the 47 was the Land and Water Conservation Fund, right? Some people might be more familiar with that.
Right.
That name. Yeah. Is that passed, right?
Yeah, it passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, my life, just to give, I'm normally so up on all this stuff, but I probably have no idea what's going on right now. I've been traveling since March, literally every other week, and then come back and try to catch up on everything you miss, and it's starting to compound, and I feel like I'm never going to dig out of it. So it's challenging to stay as up to date as I'd like to. Let's just say that.
It's kind of rough, right? We've got POMA coming up, and
you going to POMA?
Yeah, I'm going to be going to POMA.
Awesome, man. You're going to get a lot out of that. I'm speaking at POMA this year. You'll have to come to, which I think it's it's the forum, or the panel. So it'll be like before the breakout sessions. But yeah, me and Nick Hoffman, Nick?
I don't know.
Nick's a cool guy. He TV show host, Nick's Wild Ride, and David Draper, who's one of the editors with the Outdoor Sportsman's Group, and there's another person, a female, and I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. But talking about how to manage your relationships. So it should be a fun couple-hour panel.
Definitely. Yeah. I had heard about POMA on your podcast and everything. And I was like, I keep plugging your podcast. I'm perfectly okay with that because I love your podcast, but
thank you.
But yeah, I had heard about POMA on the Restless Native, and, I started researching it and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, and I think I had asked you a couple questions about it. And so thank you for answering the questions. But
yeah, I'll send them a notice for my commission.
Yeah. I'm kidding. Yeah, I think you're up for a vote, aren't you? But yeah, I mean, it seems like a great organization. And so as soon as I was able to, I got my ticket and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
so it's going to be me and my new cameraman.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys are going to love it, man. It's such a great, honestly, it's a really fun time too. But yeah, overall, you're going to meet so many people. The challenge will be, you'll be a little overwhelmed with just how many people you get to talk to. I mean, it's a rare organization in that you get to really sit down and network with people. Trade shows, I kind of hate them because it's like, you get 100 cards and you follow up on all of them and 2 people reply. Whereas POMA, people are talking to fewer people, but they act on the things they said they would do. It's a great group.
Yeah.
Great group.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about with Go Wild? Maybe what the future might hold, or what you would like people to know about Go Wild, or obviously they should join Go Wild. But
yeah, so you can go to download gowild.com and it'll take you to, you can pick if you're Android or iPhone, or you can even get the Garmin app right there. And I always encourage people to do a post and just say hello. Say you're new there, and that's going to show you what kind of community you just joined. I mean, any welcome post, I don't know if I've ever seen one do fewer than 10 people welcoming you. It's a very family-oriented community. It's small, but what I tell people is if you've ever been in a Facebook group for like music or guns or whatever it is, the 10,000 people in a Facebook group is going to beat 10,000 people following an Instagram page all day long, because you got people that are there for one topic and they're engaged and following that thread because of that, they're passionate about that. And that's what Go Wild is. We've got tens of thousands of people in each thread, and you're not going to get 300 likes if you're used to that on Instagram. But I have seen numbers of brands and influencers post on our platform and get significantly more engagement in terms of comments and questions. And than they're getting on other platforms.
Hands down.
An example. Yeah. Here's an example of this. I don't think he'll mind me naming him. Wes Robinson has, I don't know, 14 or 15,000 followers on Instagram, and great content creator, great photographer. And he found out about Go Wild early and joined, and he posts a lot in general. Like, he's got a lot of different content things he's doing. He's trying to start a wedding or a photo business, and he posted on his outdoor account with 15,000 followers on Instagram and said, "Hey, what do y'all think about this bow sight?" I think it was like a spot hog he was trying to get some feedback on.
He probably got like 2 responses.
Nah, he got 25 comments. It was like a lot of really good engaging posts, right? So, because he's got a good amount of following and he's built it up organically. So these are real followers. He goes on Go Wild where he has 225 followers at the time, and he posts in archery and says, "What do you all think about this?" Maybe 48 hours, he had 75 comments.
Holy cow.
These are like long paragraph discussions. This isn't like a "don't buy it" or "it's great." These are like thoughtful conversations. So that's the best example I got. I see this happen all the time, all through turkey season. I've seen people post, "Hey, going turkey hunting tomorrow, never been before, it's going to be windy, what advice do you have?" And they get to wake up when they go to the blind at 4 a.m. and they'll have 20 comments or 15 comments or 10. Even 10 is more than most people can drum up with a few hundred followers on Instagram. So do a welcome post. Tell us what you like to do. Tell us you're new there, and you're going to like it. I promise you'll stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Where else can people find you if you want to be found?
Yeah, if you download Go Wild, you'll get an email from me. You'll get at some point you'll get a message from me on the platform. So those are my actual contact information. You can reply to any of those, and I'll be in touch. And then if you want to just follow along with Go Wild on Instagram, if you're not convinced yet, you can go onto Instagram and it's Go Wild app. But I mean, the best thing to do, man, download gowild.com and get started that way.
Yeah, if nothing else, try it out and actually see that we're not just trying to blow your skirt up. I mean, it really is.
It's truly more engaging. I mean, I've seen brands that have 50, 60, 70,000 followers posting on Instagram to get like 2 bot comments a post of like, "Great photo." It's obvious it's fake, and then post on our platform and they can get some real engagement. So if you totally disagree with me, you can let me know, and as it's been pointed out, I'm responsive, and I'll get in there and we'll figure it out. I even give people advice. People are like, "How can I get more engagement?" And I spend time talking to people, so we're very accessible. So join us, and then if you want to find the podcast, that is everrestless.com.
Okay, good deal, man. I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you accepting my invitation on my podcast.
Thank
awesome.
you for the honey, by the way. I've been crushing it. I've tried the chocolate one so far, and I've eaten like a quarter of the big jar already. I brought the big jar in to share with the team, and I think I'm going to eat it all before they have a chance to eat it. I eat like ungodly amounts of honey, so I'll probably have that whole stash killed in a week. But thank you so much for sending it. It's awesome. Appreciate that.
Good deal. Yeah, the smoked chipotle is really, really good on like smoked barbecue or something like that. Just don't cook with it on there so you can actually get the taste, but
yeah, I tend to not, like, if I was doing barbecue, I wouldn't cook with honey because it's going to caramelize and get too much. But like, I've kind of got some ideas for that, and then that orange ginger one, I'm thinking on how I want to use that one too. I just straight up ate the chocolate one like with dried banana chips, and it was amazing. So I gotta find your website or whatever where you're selling that stuff to buy it. Get another order in.
Yeah, I don't have a website for it. I just kind of,
or however you were doing it. Yeah, if PayPal or whatever you're doing, I'm gonna have to get some more eventually. So I'll be circling back around eventually.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, dude. We could plug your thing here at the end. Go buy the honey. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Bee Wrangler honey.
And your book. I really am I'm gonna check it out. I just I'm doing so much driving right now. It's like I haven't had a chance to do any reading. If it's not on audiobook, it's not happening right now. So
yeah, you almost need a Tesla.
I know, right? That'd be great. Yeah, maybe I'll just get Zach to drive next time, and I can just read while he's driving.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it.
Yep, you bet.
Bye.
Bye.